Is it time to dismantle some doctrines? If you don't know what that means, then come along with me. I'm Dr. Clint Haycock, a former evangelical Bible college teacher and pastor of more than 20 years. Join me as we deconstruct whatever dogmas and beliefs have held you behind, and together work to reconstruct and rebuild your authentic self. Hello everyone, welcome to this great episode. This is a crossover episode. You're now listening to part 2, which is about to start in just a few minutes. My conversation with Austra Putnina of the Chase the Impossible podcast. Now, if you haven't heard that one yet, don't start this episode just at the moment. Head over to her platform, check out the Chase the Impossible podcast crossover episode 1, featuring her interview with me, because the next one that's about to start in a minute here on this platform is the other half of that. So you're not going to really understand what we're talking about unless you go hear part 1 first. So that's what I would highly recommend. Don't listen to part 2 until you listen to part 1 on her show, and then head back over here and check out this one. I'm just going to mention what's coming up here after this episode with Austra ends. And in fact, speaking of Austra, I am super excited to say that she is going to be our guest on the March Dismantling Doctrine podcast Zoom call. That begins on the 30th of this month at 8 p.m. UK time. If you like this conversation with Austra, you can catch her for an hour on the 30th. This is a great benefit for being a Patreon supporter of the show. If you want to get access to that call and meet Austra and talk to her for an hour, you can do that by supporting the show on Patreon. And as always, the links to that are in the show notes. And that is a great benefit for being a supporter of the show. I'll just mention now what's coming up next. So we've got this interview I've been promising forever. We did it last year, 2024, with Tim Mills, the harmonic atheist. I was on his platform talking about my book, Not So Shiny, Not So Happy People. But now I'm finally, after this episode with Austra, the next one coming up is with Tim Mills, and then I've got some really good guests lined up in April, so look for those episodes coming out after the one drops with Tim Mills, the harmonic atheist. And before we go into the chat with Austra, I was just going to mention, I spoke about my book earlier before. The last episode that I released, I read chapters 2 and 3 from Not So Shiny, Not So Happy People, How Bill Gothard Church and Family Taught Me Christianity Doesn't Work. Hope you enjoyed those 2 chapters. If you haven't heard that episode yet, you can find that on the Dismantling Doctrine podcast, of course. You can find the book on Amazon as a Kindle version, a paperback version, or an Audible AI voice version. So do me a favor too, if you do pick up a copy of Not So Shiny, Not So Happy People, please leave a good review on Amazon, because that helps greatly with the book's rankings on Amazon. So that would be greatly helpful if you would not only pick up a copy of the book, but leave a good review. All right, let's get on into now part 2 of this crossover episode featuring Austra Putnina of the Chase the Impossible podcast. Welcome everyone to part 2. If you've been listening to it was the interview of me on Austra's show, Chase the Impossible. Welcome, Austra, to part 2 on the Dismantling Doctrine podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed the first part, and also to slightly finish off the first part with the listeners that are coming from the first episode, or like the first part of our conversation. The question that I asked you, or like I want to hear answer from you about, is what is the impossible that you're chasing now?
That's a really good question. I think the impossible is I'm chasing something that I believe is profound. You know, I was, one of the things about, we talked about this on your show. I left my job and started another job and started another job, so I've been learning a lot about myself in that process. But during that time, I was remodeling the house that I bought. I was finally able to get on the property ladder here in the UK after, years and years of striving and fighting. So that was my impossible. Getting my citizenship as a British citizen, buying a house, sort of doing the things that normal people do, but it's taken me a lot longer. It's something I realized the other day is I want to sell this house and buy the next house and set it up the way I want it. Because there's something profound. I've been living in a construction zone for the last year. And every time I come home, it's not restful. And that's, I think, a spiritual connection as well. You got to come home to the house that you identify with, that you've got set up the way you want. So in a way, that's kind of, I don't know if that's impossible. It's within the realm of possibility, but it's something I've realized about myself, that this is what I need, and I'm unsettled without that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a profound thing that I think I've realized just in the last few months.
I think that's the beauty of impossible. It's impossible until it's not, because maybe at some point that thought was impossible, or
Oh, absolutely.
having like, quiet place, calm place, something that you feel like you're actually home, not just the word home, but it actually is a feeling. And I think it's something that I find fascinating about the word impossible, because there's many things that in my life, because I was thinking the other day, if somebody asked me that question, or like the first question that I asked in the first part of our conversation of what's something that felt impossible, and now it's like you're normal. I was thinking like, well, there's many things that come in my mind, but the answer that came to me was just being the way I am, the person I am. It didn't feel like doing podcasts or like doing like half Ironmans. Like what? Like who is that
Not
person?
me.
Yeah, it's not possible. Like if I met myself 10 years ago and I'll tell things that I'm doing right now or that I have done in even like the last few years, should be like, no way, like that's not me, not not possible.
Mm.
So that's where like that's the beauty of that impossible, that it's impossible until it's not, and then there's the next impossible that we now go and chase, and it's kind of never ending journey.
Yeah, that's such a great point of view, isn't it? That we're on this journey. We haven't arrived at any point. We say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to plant my flag in the sand and I'm not going anywhere further. I don't need to. The second you do that, I think you start dying somehow, dying on the inside or whatever. But yeah, absolutely. I think, and we talked about that before, the need for community, need for people around us who will tell us sometimes the things we don't want to hear, but they can give us a kick and keep us moving on that journey. That's so important. And that's what we said before, was that religion promises that. And in some ways it did, in my case. I did grow, I did change, I became a different person, but in the end, it wasn't the person that I really authentically was until I left it behind. But what's your story? Because I'm fascinated to hear your background. I mean, you're coming from Estonia, but you're not
I'm
Estonian.
yeah, I'm currently based in Estonia, originally from Latvia, which is right next to Estonia, Eastern Europe. For
Mhm.
people listening who might not have heard of these countries, because they are really tiny countries.
Yeah.
I don't even think there's 2 million of us in Latvia anymore. So it's really
Mm.
what I say is I'm rare.
Oh,
Like you
yeah,
can't find many Latvians in the
that's true.
because there's only 2 million of us. But I think the way I grew up, I would a lot of times feel like I'm a misfit, um, because I started to wake up at 5 a.m. before it was a thing, 5 a.m. club. I started to do it before it was a thing. I would wake up at 5 a.m. when I was 10 years old, go do my workouts before the school. I was training in basketball at the time, and a lot of it came from insecurity. I just thought like I'm not good enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not strong enough on the court, so I have to work extra. That's where it came from. And also it was 5 a.m., not because I was like 5 a.m. club, but it's because that's when it was dark. There was nobody out and nobody saw me running. That's kind of my story behind my experience with running, to show how significant the changes of that, like what my previous self would say, that it's impossible that you're doing like half marathons. And currently I'm 80, as we're recording this, I'm 88 days away from marathon that I signed up to like a few days ago.
Wow.
Um, and I have never done marathon. Um, and and that's pretty much where I grew up. Like I would go and do workouts that early because I was like, okay, it's dark, nobody can see me. So with that, I don't feel judged. I don't have to face my insecurities as much. I feel a bit more safer. Even though I was a lot of like I remember the first few workouts I would run and I'm like, it's dark and I'm kind of scared and I'm just like every corner I'm like, okay, I could like it was really interesting and I think that led me to well, naturally I built up really good, like, strong body because I was in basketball, I was playing all game with no breaks, and I didn't feel tired.
Mm.
Like, that is
Yeah,
because of those
great shape.
workouts. Yeah,
Yeah, it
and
does pay off, doesn't it?
but I didn't see that. I
Right.
thought, like, I'm bad player, even though I'm the only player, no breaks. I was
Uh,
like, "I'm really bad at playing. Look at all the mistakes that I made," which actually there weren't that many looking back, but that's all the
it's
mistake.
on the
I'm not
negatives.
fast enough. Yeah, and because I don't know why exactly, there might have been some things that have been, like, playing role in that, and I have identified some of them, but it's something that we all have, some experiences that plant certain beliefs that we have. But I was like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough, even though I studied in the best high school in Latvia that you actually have to get in. And then even like when I went to uni, I studied 1 year psychology. I got into the budget place. So there's only 2 places. I got in and I'm still like, well, I'm not like, it was always
Not smart enough.
even, and that's the ridiculous thing. I would have around me all the proof that I am not just like good enough. I was like really good.
Excellent,
And as
actually. Yeah.
yeah, and I still was like, nah, like I'm not like I don't see that. I would feel like,
Destructive.
yeah, I haven't achieved anything. I am nobody, like the whole thing. Um, and I had these 3 things. I am fat, ugly, clumsy. Those were the ones that were always with me, even though
Tapes that play in your head, the voices. Where did you
in
get those from? That's my question. Where did that come from? Did someone say that to you at some
I
point, that
think
this
I
is who
think
you
it
are?
was what I have understood. Like I had a friend of mine who was really close to me, and I later learned that her parents were comparing us,
Mm.
and I think that's where it might have stemmed. That it was jokingly. A lot of times she would tell me that,
Yeah, but
and I know it was and I know it wasn't bad intentions. But it's something that if you hear it for years,
Mm.
it's gonna stick with you
Yep,
to the point
absolutely.
where it's. I learned that I think down the line I started to manifest that because even like during the COVID time I was in UK, and that's when I got in like really bad shape, and and uh and that's where I was like, see,
Yeah. It's
you
all
know,
true. Been
it's
telling
true.
yourself that for years. Now it's actually
It's
coming to
actually true because even when I got my perspective changed, which a lot of it's like going through. I don't like the word healing because I think it's overused nowadays. But like going through like the process of even like go in some ways facing the shame and working through that and all the I don't call them limiting beliefs, I'll call them bullshit beliefs. Going through those and in some ways also what we talked about in previous conversation, restructuring your identity because I thought, oh, I'm this, that's the way I am, which it's and it's kind of sad to look back and know that all these glass ceilings, they stopped me from so much growth that I could have had in those years.
Yeah.
Because what I did is if there's any chance of me losing or not winning, I won't do it.
Yeah,
Because then
right.
like it reinforces my bad beliefs about myself. So I won't even give it a go. I was I was in trials for national team. Um and I intentionally didn't put the effort in. I didn't even try because I was like, see, I'm not good enough.
It's like
I didn't even
self-fulfilling
try.
prophecy. Yeah. Knew
Exactly.
this was gonna happen. Yeah. Then you just
And then I was like, see, I'm not, I knew that I'm not good enough.
told you.
But then when I look back now and I look at it, I didn't even try because, and I didn't even try because I didn't believe that I had a chance, which I had no reason to believe if I would look at it like rationally. I look at like the way I was playing, everything. I could have gone, and my parents actually like tried on top of it. They wanted, because I was, well, in some ways probably still are, smart. I had like good marks, so they wanted me to go the career route. And they would hinge me or like kind of sometimes, like a lot of times, or sometimes tell me that, well, maybe you don't need to do that basketball. And I didn't have good, I don't want to say I didn't have good coach, but we had one coach who was really, in some ways aggressive. She wasn't as compassionate towards players. She did respect me. I caused no trouble and I was playing well. So in some ways, I was a player that like had to not like had to be respected. Um,
Yeah, you
but she had nothing to kind of say.
criticize.
Yeah, like there was for the most part there was nothing. I was like a really good kid, did everything right, and still felt like, oh, I'm not good enough. And it's just so funny because I remember like I always joke that I had until I got to that like best high school. I got best marks in class for years. I was like basketball team. I was even growing up. I was doing like swimming. I went to like singing. A lot of dancing. There was a lot of things that I did, and even with that, I would always and it's something like that. It's pretty much like my parents would always say that you didn't wash your bowl.
Yeah. Find
With
the
all
one thing you
this,
didn't do.
I never felt like I was, and it might be one of the places where it stemmed from. Um, because when somebody would come over, like they're like, "Oh, I was through this and that," and I'm like, I would never hear that myself.
Mm.
And it took years and having, and I think that's where a lot of the connection started to get more closer in my family is through me doing work on myself. It it creates ripples, and through that I would have more conversations with my parents. I actually get to know them as people, and because I was in a mindset where I was blaming them for the way I was in many ways, even though it's not a, like, I'm not a bad kid. Like, for the most part, it's like many parents would want to have kid like that. Um, and but at the same time, for the way that I was thinking, the way I was limiting myself, or things like that, I would kind of blame them. And then like I went through like well, it was years of just me working on myself. And I started to have conversations with them. I started to, I don't want to say confront them. I have never felt like I need confronting to do, but just trying to understand, or like through those conversations, understanding them. And to like, this is literally something that we talked at the end of the last, or like the first part of the conversation, that I started to get perspective. I started to be like, oh, okay. Or they, like, I remember I called both my parents separately, and I called them for the first time ever. I think it was like, what, 1 or 2 years ago, and I said them thank you. I have never actually said them thank you.
Yeah.
And
That's
when I
big.
called them, uh, I I remember I called. I think dad was first. So I called my dad, and I'm like, I was so stressed. I remember I was pacing before I did the call. I was like, oh my gosh, we don't have these conversations. I feel like you have. I don't know what's coming.
Respond.
Which actually is really, I think, especially like people in some ways that are my generation, or people that are coming out of some like bad experiences or working through themselves. The more you work on yourself and you address it within family, it's really hard because family dynamics, you don't know where they're gonna go, and it's your closest ties, whether you like the ties you have or not, or whether you like the person or not, but that's the closest tie you have. So that's where it's really terrifying to potentially change family dynamic, because that's all you know. You don't know if it's gonna
Mhm.
go well or not. You don't know how they're gonna react. And I remember when I called dad, I think he said, I said thank you, and he said that he feels like he needs to apologize. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And
Fun.
he said like, yeah, like I feel like I was like really strict to you guys, and things like that. Which, like, a lot of it was like about getting good marks.
Yeah.
And
There's
as
a lot of
and
pressure.
yeah, and also they I think it was later in the conversation, because with the first part of the conversation, I said to him like, you have nothing to apologize about, because look, you have 3 kids that are fully functional people contributing to society. Like, I don't see what you need to apologize for. I understand you might feel that way, but if you look at the way we are right now, there's literally nothing for you to apologize for.
Mm.
We are not perfect, but the way that you raised us, um, like there's many things that you did right.
Yeah. A lot
On
of
the,
did a lot of positives, more positives than negatives for sure.
and then also the more I went in the conversation, I remember I told that like I felt like they never came to my games. I think in 10 years that I played basketball, they maybe came to like 2 games, I think.
Wow.
And we were talking about it, and he was like, "Well, imagine raising 3 kids that are what we have, like 6 years apart."
Yeah. Big
And I
gap.
told him like, "I can't even imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't. I'm not in a position where I can imagine it. And even if I tried, it would be hard to imagine it." And and there was something in that conversation that I was like, again, you get perspective from the other person, and you're like, "Oh, interesting." Um,
Yeah. If you can take that on board, that's
yeah,
we were talking about that in another half, weren't we? Just if you're prepared to listen. Something that really, when you were talking about how you were growing up, it struck me. I remember going through therapy years ago, and the therapist said to me this idea of our life script or our life narrative. Have you heard of that idea? She said you can rewrite your life script. You can rewrite your life narrative. What is your life's narrative? What
I have a good
like you said,
example.
yeah, what you tell yourself. This is who I'm gonna be. I mean, I can remember my uncle. telling my cousins, "You're stupid, you're lazy, you'll never amount to anything when you grow up." I mean, he was telling this to them when we were 9, 10 years old. You talk about a life script, and I remember another guy when I was teaching at the prison, I was teaching him how to do plastering and rendering, and he made a minor mistake. I mean, it was minor, and I just stepped in and I said, "Hey, let me show you how to fix that. That if you keep doing that, you're going to have more problems." He threw everything down. He said, "I'm a failure. I'm a failure." And he's effing and blanking. He said, I failed just like I failed at everything else in my life. And I'm like, dude, one tiny, and it's not even a big deal. It's not, it's recoverable. It's fixable. And I'm going to step in, and you're in a training environment. You're not getting screamed at. You're not going to lose your job. And he went to that extreme so quickly, just like I've failed at everything else in my life, and I'm in prison too. You know, you
Yeah,
talk
it's
about life
the
script.
filters we have. Like,
My God.
one thing is reality, the other is the filters or the glasses that we have on.
Yeah, the lens.
Yep. And it's I have a good example. My brother, when really tiny kids, we had in school that you have the small corridor when you're like first few classes, then you go into like the big corridor.
The
The
big
big
kids.
kids, yeah. And I remember there was one day when I was walking in the big corridor. I think it was my first year, and he was walking towards me, and I said hi to him, and he didn't answer back. It's kind of like he ignored me.
Mm,
Um, and I don't know if I tried it again or not, or it was that then and there. But I was like, I thought, or even like through different experiences, I had this belief that he was hating me growing up. I actually felt like he hates me.
that was your
Like,
interpretation of what
yeah, like
happened?
he criticizes me. He doesn't like anything I do, and da da da. Um, so one of the calls I did was call to him. I was so afraid. And and as and I remember I was like, oh, I could send a message, and I'm like, no, I need to call.
Yeah, we
Like,
have to speak in
I
it
don't
or so.
wanna call.
Why do I have to call?
Okay.
Gotta be done.
Yeah, I called, and or I think I messaged, and then we did the call. Because yeah, I think I crafted the message, I sent the message, and he answered. I don't even remember the situation.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that significant
Didn't
situation for him
register
to
to him.
remember. And he
It's so
said
big
that,
for you.
yeah, and he said that and we talked through it, I think on a call, where he said that a lot of times that the criticism is the way he expresses care. And
Mm,
and and for me, once he said that, I'm like, got it. These whole stories, restructure,
you
restructure,
built it
restructure,
all up.
restructure. He actually cared. It's just that, even better example, because I'm always trying to make sure I interpret things right. So I had it's literally just like messaging somebody, and that person messaged something back, and they answered with emoji that has like smiley face but with teeth.
Mm,
I interpret it as them laughing about at me.
right.
And I was like, hey, I want to check in.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Are you like, I feel like you're making fun of me. They're like, what do you mean? That's smiley emoji.
Yeah,
I'm smiling.
it's absolutely
I'm like, oh, I thought it's laughing emoji. You actually make fun of me with this message that you sent. But they said like, no, 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 it's smiley emoji. Like, it has teeth. It's smiling. It's not like laughing. I'm like, okay, got it. Instantly. Shit. But what if I didn't ask?
Mm,
Now I create this whole story of like, oh my gosh, they're laughing at me. Like you create, and that feeds those beliefs I had, not good enough, and this and that, and all these things. And then like through that, we now create this whole world of, they make fun of me. I'm not good enough. I am this, I am that. Instead of asking, listen, this might be a dumb question or like dumb assumption, but with what you just wrote, I feel like you're making fun of me. You're laughing at me. And they're like, no, 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 that's not the case. Instantly, emotions, anything I had that was like, zzz,
yeah,
gone.
dial it back down.
Yeah. We always want to check in with people of like, with what because there's 4 levels. One is, let's say with the way we communicate now, is one is what I think I want to say to you. Second is what I say. Third is what you hear. And fourth is how you interpret it. There's 4 levels that you need to go through for the person to actually understand what you meant. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of levels to like master, especially if I think with like even within the podcast, uh, if I say somebody, it doesn't mean that somebody listening will. And I have worked with this a lot with trying to communicate in a way that it's impossible for you to not to understand what I mean. And sometimes people are like, why you keep explaining stuff like so expansively? I'm like, that's exactly why. I want to make sure you understand it exactly the way I mean it, so that it's not that I say something to you kind of like in some ways without attention or detail. Now you misinterpret it, and now we have problems.
Yeah, we gotta well, does that somehow relate to you mentioned, I think we alluded to it in the first half, this issue of triggering, being triggered, that must have something to do with it. Because when you're telling that story about the smiley face emoji, it makes me think of things that have happened to me since I've come out of religion. I've been triggered, I might hear a song, a Christian song, a worship song that I used to sing in church or whether I was part of the band when I was playing in worship teams, and that takes me it's not just the song, it's all that the song represents, all the years of service and effort and energy spent in something that I didn't believe, I don't believe in anymore. It was a waste of time, and I get really angry and upset, and it's like just from hearing a song or like
Yep.
you saying, seeing that emoji, you can be triggered so quickly.
It's trigger is a memory that appears to be real, or like it makes a memory that happened in the past appear to be real right now. So that's where, like, let's say the example with the song, you play the song, you're not present anymore. You're now back in that situation, and your body, your mind, your nervous system, everything is reacting to that as if it's happening now. So that's where, like, a lot of times the way I look at it is that, and it's really tough with traumatic experiences because we all have gone through some level of trauma. Um, but also, Tim Fletcher talks a lot about this. He's brilliant with this. How there's like big T and small trauma, but a lot of small T trauma also comes from neglect, which is something that I saw or identified within myself, where I was like, well, I don't really have any like big traumas in my life. We all have some like traumas. Then when I listened to episode where he was talking, I'm like, oh,
Yeah, wait.
hey, there's some worry. Okay, there's
Or
some worries. Yep. And there was a time when I didn't like triggers. I was trying to avoid them because it doesn't feel good. So what we do is we now create this like reality, or we isolate ourselves because it's easy not to be triggered when you isolate yourself. But also, it's not helpful for you. And now the way I look at triggers, but I have gone through enough of them, um, where I look at them now. Well, first of all, they're gonna show me or give me some information. And when I'm triggered, let's say somebody says something, I'll be like, I instantly am able to analyze myself. And depending who I talk to, if it's like really close person of mine, I can be like, what you just said triggered me. And then we can walk through that together.
yeah, what
Um,
exactly happened? Yeah,
yeah. And I'm not playing blame game, nothing. I know that it's not your fault.
yeah, it's
Like,
what you
it's not
happened.
you triggering me. It's happening within me.
Yeah,
So there's
didn't
something
do it
that
on
I need to
purpose.
resolve. Yeah.
It just
Um,
happens. But yeah, it says something about where we're coming from, our own development. That's something I learned, going back to that example of hearing that song. I was so angry and so upset, blindsided, really. I felt like I'd been just smacked out of nowhere, like punched in the face. And someone I was talking to this woman who does a lot of work with ex-religious recovery, and she said, you got to think about don't use that language. You said blindsided, you said you were devastated, you said you were debilitated. Why do you have to give it so much power? You've just given this trigger all sorts of power over you. And you need to say, okay, what does it say about my own journey? I'm not that person anymore. Like, I'm not in that position anymore, not in that situation anymore. I can step outside, take a break, calm down, and say, okay, what just happened? I'm not going to let this destroy me like I did before, perhaps. And you've made progress. You're growing in that, aren't you?
Also, with triggers, you don't get immune to them.
Mm, like
What happens?
stress. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we think that, oh, I still got triggered, so it doesn't mean that I'm healing. But the intensity might go down, or the way you react might go down, or it might change. So that in itself is a measure of healing. It's measure of progress. And I don't want to say you can become trigger proof, because I do believe that it is possible. But also, in some ways, uh, and that might be triggering to some people.
Mm.
What's the fun in not being triggered? Because there's not opportunities to grow. Like if you don't get triggered, like the way I look at it now is I get triggered, but I'm in a healthy space where my triggers, they don't throw me off. It's way different when you're still in the healing phase. It's terrible when you go through that. So I'm not promoting that as a good thing, even though it's good for you, but it doesn't feel good. Um, but I'm in a place now where, and even with that, there probably are some experiences that I'm gonna have that it's like, oh shit, that's much worse than I thought it gonna be. I thought I'm healed or I'm not there anymore.
More
Um,
to there.
exactly, where either something happens or something says something to me. Or I also like to intentionally put myself in situations where I do challenge myself. In some ways, I look at it as me preparing for life. It's like with the challenges that I do, or like the half Ironman that I did. Like I gave myself 90 days to prepare for it. No background in the sport, and it's 70.3 miles of triathlon.
Good
Like
job.
it's a lot.
That's a lot.
And I had no experience with the sport. I hadn't been on a road bike. I hadn't done open water swimming. Like none of that. I have 90 days to figure it out. Um, but like through doing that, I'm putting myself in situations where I have to figure things out. And even on the race day, there were so many things that like they go wrong, or like you have pain and how you manage that and overcome that, because that's where I train the mental muscle. Um, but the way I look at triggers right now is they're like a gift. There's something that I can unravel as long as I'm being curious, to the point of the first part of the conversation, curious versus judgmental. Because I can get triggered and now I beat myself up about being triggered. Oh, you shouldn't feel this way, and it happened then, and you should be further along right now. It's not that big of a deal. It's like, yeah, but it still made you feel a certain way. So we don't want to disregard that. You still feel like angry or frustrated or sad or like triggered. Like you still feel that way. So if we now try to shut it down, it's like it's not helping you, because now you go through the process of like, okay, let's suppress emotions, and they're gonna come up eventually. Something will happen. They will come out.
Yeah.
You just need to suppress them long enough until they will be like, okay, I think it's time. There's no space anymore. Um, but then once I get triggered, I'm always now looking for, okay, I'm curious, what is here? Like, let's say somebody says something to me that triggers me, I'm always, and I have few people that I can go to and kind of unpack those things,
Yeah.
where I'm like, okay, this is the situation. I felt triggered by this, and this is kind of how I think how far I have gone with understanding it. And then they can give you some insight, um, or something that they see from their perspective, which is also valuable to have different people. It's like we have this, not even the problem, we have this puzzle, and let's look at different perspectives of what different people see. And then based on what they give to me, I'm like, or sometimes they might ask me follow-up question, and I'm like, huh. Like I had and this is really recent. I think it is last week. A friend of mine who's like a mentor to me, um, where I was talking. Oh, I think I said that because I'm working now with like some like Olympic athletes and like high level like athletes. And I was like, I still feel imposter syndrome. It's like part of me thinks that like I'm not good enough or I don't deserve it. Or, even though again, no reason to think that. I haven't lost clients where they're like, your work is not good or it's not worth it, or they keep coming back. And sometimes they're like, why are you coming back?
Must
Yeah,
be something right.
yeah. And that's where now I'm in a place where there must be a reason, but it's still like you still have some of those underlying things. Um, but at this point, they don't stop me from taking action or still showing up for those people and doing my job. But one thing that he asked me is like, why do you feel that way though? And it made me stop and be like,
Mm.
I don't know. Like,
And think about.
I don't know. Like, if I actually think about it, with where I am right now, not with my past and everything, which is another thing that a lot of times we like to drag the past in the present, even though in the present, there was really good clip that I saw that uh, pat or the you can get, for the most part, we get trauma in an instant, so we can also heal in an instant.
Mm.
But there's many things that lead up to that align until you get to that point where you're like, that's done. But we think that it's such a long process, but there's many things that play a role where, because like if you think about it, you got the trauma in an instant, whether it was some event or something said something to you. A lot of times you can even remember that. Then what makes us think that we can't heal in an instant as well?
That's true. That's a good perspective. Well, speaking of perspective, what do you think? Is there a value to therapy, counseling, that sort of thing? Because I've been helped greatly by some therapists are better than others, obviously, but someone who's informed by trauma informed therapists. Because I can
I think
remember,
trauma informed is the key word there.
yeah, that's the thing. Someone has to know. In my case, there's a lot of religious trauma, which we didn't get into when we were talking about the first half of the podcast, but that's a whole other thing for those of us that have come out of religion, RTS, religious trauma syndrome. But when I got divorced a few years back, I kind of was struggling a little bit, and I went and saw a therapist at the college I was working at, and she helped me see it. She said, you're walking around and you're kind of debilitated, you're depressed. I mean, it wasn't an ugly divorce. It was an amicable split, but it was a massive life change. I'd been married, 30 years, my whole adult life. That's a long married. It's a long time. And then suddenly to have this person move out and, sitting around the house, like, what do I do next? She said, okay, you've got to think of it, flip the script. She said, think about it. You're now liberated. And I'm not saying that she was a horrible person or that you were a horrible person, but she's liberated and so are you. What can you do to your house that you couldn't do before because you were living with someone and you had to compromise and everything? I thought, wow, that's a really great perspective. I never thought of it that way. So I went home, started painting the walls, arranged the house the way I wanted it to be arranged. And I thought, this is all about me being liberated. I'm not going to hear anybody complaining because I'm living it by myself. And that completely changed my whole perspective on the entire divorce thing, being liberated, rewriting that life script.
Yeah, all the shoulda, coulda, a lot of times they come from what we think we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to be.
Mm.
And I'm not here being like, let's divorce kind of thing. But also if you think about it, a lot of times people get married really young when they don't even know themselves.
That's true.
And they don't know what they want. And I know several people that have gone or still are going through that where, and also you feel the pressure. The older you get, the more it's like, oh, you should get married. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
do I want to
A
get
lot of
married for
pressure.
the sake of check mark, or
Yeah.
do I want to actually trust the process of? It's like that's something that I have had a lot of. I don't want to say a lot of pressure, but I have experienced it. Because like for me, I have learned that um in many ways, for you to attract the person that you want to have in your life, you have to become the person that that person actually would be attracted to. Surprise, surprise! It's not just like, oh, I want you. It's like,
Yeah.
will that person want you?
They want me.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
yeah. And if the answer is no, it's like, let's get to work and let's work on ourselves and
Yeah.
and develop ourselves. Or and also not in a place where now I have to become that person just for them. Um, but it's like authentically to have a relationship that you want. A lot of the times it comes with you because there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done. And when you're really young, and a lot of people do get married young, you don't even know who you are.
It's so true.
So that's and then by the time you get to the divorce, now you beat yourself up. I'm a failure.
Yeah.
I failed. I'm supposed to be a good husband. We're supposed to like do this or that. It's like maybe it can be true, but is it serving either of you? So to
Yeah.
think that way or
To
believe
beat
that way?
yourself up. It's
Yeah.
so true. Yeah, in our case, we had the whole religious component added in as well because we were very young. I mean, I wasn't super young. I was 25 when we got married, but pretty young.
Still young.
Yeah, still young. I didn't really know who I was. And it was all in this context of religion. I was going to go to Bible college. I was going to become a minister, a pastor, blah, 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 Bible college teacher. And when we deconstructed, luckily we deconstructed our beliefs basically at the same time. So we didn't have that issue because for a lot of people that I've talked to coming out of religion, one partner will deconstruct and stop believing, become an atheist or whatever. The other person doesn't and doubles down and stays in the faith and stays in the belief system, whatever. That can lead, if you got kids involved in that, my
Yeah.
God, that is hugely problematic. You're going to
Yeah.
fight
But
and argue about that.
to get back to your question, I do think there's value to that, to therapy. And I personally haven't gone to therapy, even though I have like bachelor's in sports psychology. I actually studied psychology. Like I got in psychology like when I was 12 years old.
Mm.
And
Wow.
big part of it was, what's wrong with me? How do I fix myself? Kind of thing. which
Yeah,
is how
you
most
feel-
psychologists get in. Yep. I didn't know the healing was a thing. For me, it felt a lot of like woo woo back then. But it was a lot of trying to understand like why am I the way I am? Why do I feel this like insecure? Or I would struggle in so many like ridiculous ways. That even a good example, I would feel anxious to cross the street when there was like 4 lines of cars.
Hmm.
I'll be insecure of like they're gonna see me, they're gonna see my body, and I'm fat. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So I gotta be judged for that. Yeah, it was terrible. I never felt uh comfortable being myself, or especially being around people, because I always felt like they're gonna judge me, and I would never let anybody close because I thought, if, let's say, if they give me a hug, they're gonna see everything that's wrong with me. So I had to keep it
physically
really
gonna
distance.
feel my body. Yeah.
Yep. So
No
there was
truth.
like, and there was like a lot of that. And I remember I said that one of my clients about how in the gym I would struggle to do, let's say, squats, because like it might be my ankle mobility. I don't know what exactly it is, and even still, I'm not even sure that it's actually true that I can't do the right technique, um, or do it like deep enough. My mom's always like laughing at it because she can easily do deep squats, and she's like really easily do that all the time, and I can't do it. Eventually, as I try to do it, I'll fall back, and I'll be insecure about it. Um, and it wasn't like she intentionally would make fun of me. It's only like most recently that we're like more connected, that she's like always kind of like joking about it. That she's like, try to do it, and I'm like,
I can't do it.
and that's why I still want to find a way if I can like do it. But there were like several things like being able to do that, or I felt like I'm weak because I still can't do pull-ups, which is one of the things that I probably will learn to do this year. Is one of the goals.
Mhm.
Does it make me weak? Not really. I'm in general, I'm like pretty
Yeah.
strong.
Do a lot of other things.
Yeah, but I'm weak. I can't do that. And like through and I said to that client, I was like, I would be literally, I wouldn't do squats in the gym because I was so insecure. And sometimes I would literally, I remember I would show up to the gym, I already am anxious. I would do only like bike for 15 minutes and I leave.
Right.
I just couldn't do anything
Not
else.
even get the full workout in.
Yeah. Or if I would go to the gym, it would be 24-hour gym and I'm there at 5 a.m.
Right. Nobody else
There's no
is in the place. Nobody can
Yep.
laugh at you.
Exactly. And it's not even that anybody was laughing at me. It's like nobody can see me because then they all are thinking this, right?
I know what they're thinking.
I have even better example. With my half marathon, first half marathon. I wasn't, like how a lot of half marathons, they're like skinny and things like that. I wasn't like that. I wasn't even like in like good shape. I was like slightly, I don't want to say obese, but like overweight. And I remember I was in the gym after I have finished the half marathon, which, by the way, I finished second to last. And there was a
You
time,
finished it though.
but here's the thing. There was a time that I would look at it as a failure.
Yeah, I didn't
This
get it.
time,
Somehow
yeah,
knew better.
this time there was two of us at the end of the just like dying. The guy had been running or he stopped running for 6 months. He started in his 40s. I had been running only for 6 months. So we both are at the end dying. And which for me, actually, it was more like 4 months when I calculated how much I actually trained.
Yeah, that's very little for a marathon. It really is.
It was half marathon, but still.
Yeah, still, that's
With
a lot.
and I remember I told him, imagine how cool. We're like royalties. Everybody, the whole city shut down just for us.
It's a
And
great
it
perspective, though, isn't it?
shift in perspective, because
Yeah.
I could be like, oh my gosh, I still had those thoughts come up, but I'm like, this is so cool. Like the whole city is literally waiting on us. We can like run and wave, do the whole thing, and everybody's still cheering on. At least the people that were like still there watching. So even like through that experience, I was I was able to, and there was a time that I would be terrified even of thought of running with a lot of people, not even talking about finishing second to the last. But in this case, it was like, first of all, it'll be really cool story to share, because when people tell me like, oh, I can't run, I'm like, I finished second to last. Like, trust me,
Still finished
like
it.
you probably are faster than I am, because like people think that I'm a runner, that I'm like super fast. I'm like, I'm still slow. I'm really slow. I still struggle. And that's a funny thing. I struggle to see myself as a runner, even though I have finished 4 half marathons.
You've
And
done really well. It's more than I've run. I've never run one on my life. I have no desire to run one. Well, you mentioned one other thing. I know we're running low on time, but I'm interested. Maybe this is the last question. you mentioned the imposter syndrome. This is something I talk about in my book, that I felt like I struggled with the imposter syndrome as a pastor of a church, as a teacher. I did
In what
no,
way?
yeah, in
How does it look like?
what's that?
How does it look like for you?
Well, I always felt like going into, let's say I was teaching a class session, I felt like somehow I had this script that went in my head that said, "You've gotta be the expert. You have to know everything." So if a learner asked me a question and I didn't know the answer to it, I would feel like, that they're gonna find out the truth, that I don't know anything, that I'm an imposter. I don't deserve to be here. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be up in front of this class. And yet that's a completely impossible standard. You can't Nobody can know everything about everything, so struggling with that was a big thing in my life, overcoming that, being able to admit, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out for you. I'll get back to you on that. That's a big step. So where did you struggle with that and how can people overcome that?
A lot. Like I'm nodding because I'm like, yep, yep,
Me
yep.
too.
I know that. Been there in so many ways. Still am. Even a week ago, I was still there. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that having imposter syndrome doesn't mean that you have to allow it to stop your actions. Because a lot of times, growth, everything happens within your actions, and many times we allow our emotions and how we feel actually stop us from doing. But even within the doing, these impossible standards that we have, a lot of them come from insecurity. So it's like, I don't want to be seen as not knowledgeable or not knowledgeable within the subject because I need to be an expert. I went through this with the coaching because I was like, it's so confusing because as a coach, well, you need to market yourself. So you need to show up as an expert,
Yeah.
like
You
you
know,
know
so
this thing. Yeah. Because only experts can coach you, right? Like only experts can help you. Which by the way, my perspective on experts is if you think you're an expert, you're not anymore because the moment you think you're expert, you stop learning, you stop developing, and you
Mhm.
you start going
You're not
downhill.
growing, you're stagnating.
Yeah. And but that aside, with imposter syndrome, one thing that I can tell there is that we try to show up as these perfect like personalities or people, but what we actually connect over is our imperfections. We don't connect over like if you have this perfect person in your life, what do you connect over? Like you don't. Or it's like with and I felt so uncomfortable with putting myself out there as an expert because I'm like, I'm in my 20s. Like,
Yeah, what do I know?
I mean, I know a lot, but am I an expert?
Yeah.
I have a life to live ahead of me. Like I have had challenges, but it's it's different than and I have had and I would always be afraid of like people working with me. I would have people work with me that are twice my age. And I would be like, they're gonna think I'm nobody said me you're too young. Because if
Yeah.
they feel like you can help them, they'll be open to that. Um but it's something about that imposter syndrome. I think a lot of it is coming from insecurity because
Mm.
we are afraid to be vulnerable or we are afraid of being exposed to something or like to others or others now are exposed to our vulnerabilities. And I think big part of it is becoming comfortable with being vulnerable and with that becoming comfortable with the human side of you and accepting that I will make mistakes, I will mess up, we all do. So what? It's a lot about like what do you make it mean? Especially what do you make it mean about you? Let's say in your example of let's say you say something wrong in the class and like one kid is like, "Well, actually,
Yeah.
it is this." And now you're like,
Whoops.
"Say no."
Yeah. Sure. I don't
Yeah,
know
and
anything.
instead it can be like, "Thank you." Like, like you can actually have conversation with
Yeah.
them and you
You
can
can
be
take
like,
that on board.
"Yeah, it's like it's not just me teaching you, I'm also learning from you." It's not always just about, "Oh, I'm a teacher, so I have to be the teacher. I have to know everything." It's like none of us have all the answers. Um, it's kind of like surprise, surprise, but
What a shock.
we don't have all the answers. We have more. It's the same with because the imposter syndrome is a tricky one because it's so filled with shame where it takes over, and you kind of like want to hide away, or you. It's different than guilt because guilt still have some action in it, but with the shame, it kind of makes you shut down and try to be small, and but it is, I think something that can help is to actually question it. Is it actually true? Like one, if I now or let's say even with your example, with that um with that like thought process, has there ever been experience in your like background as a teacher where you didn't know the answer?
Sure.
And did it make you a bad teacher? Did all your like all students, everybody was like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Let's get next one in. Like
There's
this
no
one
answer.
doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he has no clue. Like, and a lot of times it's good to look back on your past experiences of things that you did overcome and see that, oh, I survived. I went through that.
Yeah.
And then the more you have those, the more references you have of, oh, I wasn't perfect. And let's say with my example, um, oh, I wasn't perfect like coach, or I don't know if athletes want to work with me. Okay, I start to work with athlete. She keeps coming back. It's like, so there must be something I'm doing right. Like
Yeah. You.
I'm not as long as I'm not forcing that person to come back, like
Yeah.
which I'm not. That's where like, okay, if somebody comes back to me, there must be a reason why they do that. So even if I feel like I'm not good enough, let's say with my standards, which might be really high standards, for them, that's all I need. That's all they need.
You're still
They need
helping them.
exactly what I can give to them. Um, and I think that's where it's good to again put things in perspective because even like with being an expert, you don't need to be an expert to find to help person who is 5 steps behind you. All you need to do is be 5 steps ahead of them. And then you help them to navigate those 5 steps. And by the time they have done that, now you have navigated the next 5 steps.
Yeah.
Which it's pretty much like how we live life. You just take it one step at a time, and we can't do it in all areas of life as well. It's like I always use it as an example of cleaning the house. We try to fix like New Year's resolutions. I'm gonna fix everything in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, go try to clean your house, not one room at a time, but you just go like pick up a sock, then you go there, you wash a dish, then you go there, do that. How clean will be your house and how exhausted will you be? Choose one thing, focus on that, work through that, build up your confidence, and now that will overflow into now I feel confident to go to the next thing. And then you just do that. And the rest of the things you have in maintenance mode. It's like, I'm not going to deep clean this all the time. I'm going to deep clean this while everything else we just keep in maintenance.
Yeah.
And navigate that. And
Yeah.
and accept that life is a messy experience and none of us know what we're doing.
It's
Like,
true.
We both are here teaching people how to live, but we're still figuring it out ourselves. Like,
Yeah. We're
it's
still working through it.
exactly. And I think that's where like being able to accept that I'm human, I'm also figuring it out, you're figuring it out. Let's look for ways how we can figure it out together without like shaming, blaming, anything like that. That's where you can create that environment where there's less imposter syndrome, because there's less of like, if I fail, like what will happen? What will it mean about me? It's like nothing. You failed. It's a stepping stone. Like did you learn? What can you learn? You learned something. Okay, good. Stepping stone.
There's still something positive to pull out.
Because we're so paralyzed with the failure. But yeah,
That's what I was going to say. The thing about the imposter syndrome, it's crippling. Is if you give into it, it's paralyzing, crippling. You end up doing nothing because you're afraid, oh, everyone's going to laugh at me, or I'm going to be made a fool of in front of everyone. And they're going to find out the truth that I don't know anything or whatever. It's very triggering, very crippling. I was going to say, we are officially out of time. Yeah. You've been listening to part 2. If you still haven't figured this out by now, part 1 was over on Austra's platform, Chase the Impossible. So go over there if you haven't heard that. She interviewed me for a good 45 minutes or so. I was going to ask you before I let you go, how can people find your podcast? How can people find you if they wanted to connect on social media?
I think for the most part, if they look for Chase the Impossible or even like my name, they're probably going to find me. There aren't many people out there with my name that are posting stuff. So Instagram, YouTube, those probably are the main platforms. I'm also on like TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, but I would say like Instagram, YouTube would be the main places. And podcast also is on like all the audio platforms as well.
Yeah, wherever you get your podcast. Yeah. I was going to ask you too, before I let you go, we do our Dismantling Doctrine podcast Zoom calls, which is a group call every month. I think you'd be a fantastic guest. Would you be interested in coming back maybe and doing a podcast Zoom call with our Patreon supporters? So
yeah,
I'll reach out with some dates and maybe we could look at March or April. That would be really good. But thank you so much, Austra. I've really enjoyed talking to you and doing part 1 over on your show. I'm sure we'll connect again. So thank you. Have a great day.